Hello, my name is Summer Gibson, and this is my strategy presentation on split page note-taking. For this task, we will be comparing two different texts. This is a fourth grade activity, and again, we will be comparing two different texts. One is a nursery rhyme, one is a picture book. They both feature Humpty Dumpty. The comparisons that we will be making are through the strategy of split page note-taking. There will also be an assignment at the end, and that assignment also focuses on the same format as the split page note-taking to reinforce the new strategy. So the first text that we're going to read is the nursery rhyme. For this test, the teacher will pass out the nursery rhyme and one sheet of paper. The teacher then models how to fold and fill out the paper. Step 1, the paper should be vertical. Step 2, you fold the paper in half. A lot of times we refer to this as hot dog style. Step 3, you're going to tell the students to create threes. Some people like to fold it. They'll bring the bottom up and then fold the top over and do it until it's even. A suggestion I have is maybe just bring the top up about 2/3 of the way, make a crease, unfold, and then bring the bottom down to the crease, and then crease that new section and unfold. Either way, by the end of folding, you should be getting a 2x3 grid. From there, you're going to figure out where the left and the right side is and tell the students this is where who, what, and where should be. They should be on the left-hand side, and then when, why, and how should also be on the left-hand side on the back of the paper. It's important to already have a model filled out for the students and then also do the model for the students. That way they're getting exposure to how the strategy should be done and they're following with you every step of the way because this is a new strategy. So then we're going to go to the nursery rhyme, the Humpty Dumpty task. The teacher is going to explain that they're going to read the rhyme, and then with their partner, they're going to fill out the set of questions that they just filled out, the who, what, where, when, and why. You can probe the students by telling them, who is the story about? What is the character doing? So instead of just who, what, where, when, why, you put a little more context into the questions. So you reinforce who's the story about, what is the character doing, where is the story taking place, why did something happen to him, and then how did these actions resolve, or how did the story close. Students only write a few words, so if students are struggling on the question, they can take a guess and then move on. This is a new strategy, so I'm not expecting the students to be masters at the strategy yet. So at this point, they're going to be reviewing with the teacher at the end to get feedback on how they did, how they made their inferences, and so on. So then we run through the Humpty Dumpty. So Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horsemen and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So because this is fourth grade and this is a fairly short nursery rhyme, I went on to say that this collaborative task should only take 5 minutes because we've at this point have already read the nursery rhyme with the students. So now they're just working with their partner to fill out basic question and answer sections. And for fourth grade, this should take no longer than 5 minutes. A big part of this is just reviewing. You really want to make sure that the students are following who, what, where, when, why, how, and giving you good answers. So even though it might just be, Humpty Dumpty was on a wall, well, just make sure that they know that he's on a wall, so they're making the inferences and drawing the correct information. This is an example of what the students could fill out. So for who, obviously it's Humpty Dumpty. What, he was sitting on a wall. Where is he sitting? A wall. And then when can sometimes be difficult in books because for this one, you don't really know. You aren't given any information inside the nursery rhyme. But if you reflect back on the page where you see Humpty Dumpty, he is behind or in front of a orange yellow background, which could mean that he is maybe sitting there in the daylight. So you could say it might have been daytime because the sky is yellow. And then why did he fall? Students might make a whole bunch of assumptions on this one. He's circled and he's sitting on a wall. Maybe he's just not being careful. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons why he could fall. There's no explicit reason. This is just trying to get students to look for this information within text So even though you might find answers and might not find answers, it's just getting students in the habit of making guesses too, educated inferenced guesses. And then finally, how, again, this is like a summary. So how did the story end? Well, he couldn't get put back together again. Now then we're going to transition. So after we do that, we're transitioning to after the fall. After the fall is a picture book, and it's a little bit longer, but it has very easy, understandable text. The focus here isn't necessarily the text, it's comparing and using the strategy. So for this reason, I didn't choose challenging text. I want the students to understand the strategy. And for this book, we're going to have the students make another note sheet. So the student will pass out, or sorry, the teacher will pass out to the students another page to make the split page note taking. They're going to model the same 2x3 grid as before. So other input from the teacher might be needed to just remember how to make the 2x3 grid. And then after that, they're going to be drawing inference-based questions in the who, what, where, when, and why. So instead of who, what, where, when, and why, they're actually going to start developing questions. Now these questions aren't going to be hard. I included some examples. So instead of who, I put who is the story about? Are there any new characters? Instead of what, I put what happened to Humpty after the fall. So now you're starting to form sentences and inferences. Again, this is 4th grade, so they should be able to form sentences. And if not, maybe have them form the questions in partners and then share to the teacher to collect all the questions and form the same questions. So in review, it's a little easier. For the collaborative task, this is where the students are actually going to read the book now. So the first part was an introduction to make inferences based off the cover. Now they're actually going to read the book. And during this time, they're going to read the book and then they're going to fill out the chart. This is a picture book and they're 4th graders, so it should not take more than 10 to 15 minutes for them to read and do this book. If they're obviously not paying attention or a little distracted, you might need some more time, but generally this should take no more than 10, 15 minutes to go through. And again, if students are having problems with this task, they can make educated guesses and then at the end we review anyway. So just try to get them to take the best educated guesses they can. This is a practice for inference. This isn't going to be graded on, accountability of the answer itself. And so this is an example of what could be filled out afterwards. Who's the story about? Any new characters? Well, it's really just about Humpty and he becomes a bird. What happens to him after the fall? Well, maybe he was sad, he was scared, but he got back up and he ended up being happy again. Where does the story take place? Generally around the wall. You'll see the King's Hospital, you'll see the grocery store and his house, but generally we want to reinforce the fact that the main story takes place where the fall took place. And so this might be a good time to review that within your review with the class. And then when does the story take place? Again, it's not explicitly said. You see lots of daytime, nighttime, but it happens after his first fall. That might be a good inference to make. So when does the story take place? Well, it happens after his fall. So they could say daytime, they could say nighttime, they could say, after the first story, but I would try to encourage them to think, well, this whole story happened after the fall. That's part of the title is after the fall. So they should be drawing that inference really good by this point. And then why is Humpty back on the wall? Well, he's conquering his fear. He fell down and he loved being up there and watching all the birds, and so now he wants to go back up there and watch his bird friends. That's why he's going back on the wall. How did Humpty Dumpty get back up again? So this has a lot of, again, input that the students can make through their inferences, but generally he got up one step at a time. He conquered his fears and he was able to get back up. So during the wrap up, the teacher is going to hand out an independent test sheet for the students. This is going to be structured in the same 2x3 grid that they've had for the entire lesson. For this task, they're going to get both of their note sheets, and they can only use their note sheets, not the text. And then they're going to fill out almost like an assessment-based questionnaire that's in the same format involving both texts instead of one text or another text. So I'm going to show you the example of that. So this is the example of the assessment. So who is the main character of both stories? What happened to Humpty in the first story? Where does Humpty like to sit and watch the birds? When does Humpty get back up again, the first or second story? Why did Humpty get back up again? How did Humpty feel when he climbed the wall after the fall? So again, this is an assessment, and every answer should be directly from the note page. This isn't meant to challenge them on the text itself. It's to challenge them on reflecting back on their notes and getting used to the strategy and the usage of both papers to fill out a similar structured assessment. So in review, this activity was the split page note-taking. We used it as both notes and an assessment. This was an intro task to the split page note-taking, and I attempted to scaffold the ideas of the note-taking, developing a simple who, what, where, when, why, a question, and then an assessment involving both note pages. This strategy is great for ELD students because they're able to write their notes in their own native language and rewrite it later. This is also a great way for students to start practicing inferences and taking in-text notes. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye.